June 12, 2024, a Thursday morning at an auto salvage yard in Gresham, Oregon. Jose Martinez pulled apart the rear seat of a 2018 Toyota Camry destined for the crusher. Between the cushion and the backrest, wedged deep in a 3-centimeter gap, his fingers touched something small and hard. A micro SD card. SanDisk, 64 gigabytes. Curious, he slid it into his phone. The screen lit up with a timestamp. August 18, 2020, 11:43 p.m. A car's interior, a man behind the wheel. Another man climbing into the back seat. Jose's hand trembled as he reached for his phone to dial 911. 4 years earlier, August 18, 2020, had started like any other Tuesday for Marcus Cheng. At 34, he lived a carefully structured life, split between two worlds. Days belonged to online programming courses watched on a second-hand laptop at the small kitchen table of the Southeast Portland apartment he shared with his wife. Nights belonged to the road, driving strangers across the city in his silver Toyota Camry, the Uber decal glowing in his windshield. The pandemic had made everything harder. Masks were mandatory. Passengers were anxious. Tips had dried up. But Marcus kept working. He had a dream, a software developer position, a real career. He just needed a few more months of savings. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We're really curious where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a rating. That Tuesday, Marcus logged into the Uber app at 6 p.m. His wife, Jenna Cheng, 32 years old, and a nurse at Emmanuel Hospital, had already left for her night shift. They'd texted earlier in the day. She'd sent him a photo of her lunch. He'd replied with a programming joke she didn't understand, but hearted anyway. Their routine was comfortable, even boring. Marcus liked boring. Boring meant safe. Jenna had met Marcus 3 years earlier at an ESL conversation class in 2017. He'd immigrated from Taiwan in 2015, carrying big ambitions and limited English. She'd been drawn to his quiet determination, the way he filled notebooks with careful English sentences and lines of code in equal measure. They married in 2018 in a small ceremony at a friend's backyard. No family flew in. Money was tight. They'd build their life slowly, together. That was the plan. The last message Jenna received from Marcus came at 10:34 p.m. Couple more rides and heading home. She was in the middle of checking a patient's vitals when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled, and slipped it back into her scrubs pocket. Her shift wouldn't end until 7 a.m. By then, Marcus would be asleep in their bed, his phone charging on the nightstand, the early morning light just beginning to filter through the blinds. Marcus completed his last official ride at 11:31 p.m. The app logged the drop-off at a residential address in North Portland. For the next 16 minutes, his status showed as available but not engaged. He was probably driving back toward the city center, where late-night rides clustered around bars and restaurants still operating under capacity restrictions. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus accepted a new request. The pickup location was the corner of Southeast 82nd Avenue and Division Street. The passenger's name was David M. The account had been created the day before. Payment method, a prepaid Visa card. Destination, Northwest Portland, about 25 minutes away. The fare would be decent. What Marcus didn't know was that Detective Robert Holmes had already worked a full day by the time Marcus started his evening shift. Holmes, 41 years old in August 2020, had spent 16 years with the Portland Police Bureau, the last 7 in the Missing Persons Unit. His desk was organized chaos, files stacked in an order only he understood. On his corkboard hung photos of faces, some found, some still searching. He'd seen it all. Runaways, abductions, people who simply walked away from their lives. Each case left its mark. But on August 18, 2020, Holmes clocked out at 7 p.m., drove home to his apartment in Beaverton, microwaved leftovers, and fell asleep watching a baseball game. He had no idea that by morning a new file would land on his desk. Tyler Grant, 28 years old, also drove for Uber that night. He'd been on the road since 5 p.m., competing with hundreds of other drivers for the trickle of pandemic-era riders. Tyler had met Marcus 3 months earlier at a gas station where drivers often gathered between rides. They'd started a Telegram chat with a few other drivers, sharing tips about which neighborhoods tipped well, which streets to avoid, how to game the app's algorithm. Tyler liked Marcus. The older man was serious, responsible, always checking his Dashcam was recording. Tyler had installed one too, after Marcus recommended it, following an incident where a drunk passenger had threatened him. At 10:51 p.m., Marcus had sent a message to the group chat. "Quiet night tonight, few more trips, and home." Tyler had replied at 11:15 p.m. with a thumbs-up emoji. Marcus never read it. The message sat there, delivered but unopened, as midnight approached. Security cameras captured the moment at 11:49 p.m. The footage was grainy, black and white, from a convenience store camera pointed at the street corner. A silver Toyota Camry pulled up. A figure in a dark jacket, baseball cap, and medical mask walked from the shadows and opened the rear passenger door. Average height, average build. Impossible to identify in the COVID era when everyone wore masks. The car's interior light briefly illuminated 2 silhouettes before the door closed. The Camry pulled away, heading west on Division Street. The timestamp blinked. 11:49:37 p.m. Inside the vehicle, Marcus greeted his passenger with the practiced friendliness of someone who'd given thousands of rides. The Dashcam mounted on his windshield recorded everything. The passenger settled into the back seat, adjusting his mask. Marcus confirmed the destination. Northwest Portland, near the Pearl District. The passenger nodded. His voice was muffled behind the mask, but audible. "Yeah, that's right." Marcus pulled into traffic. The streets were nearly empty. The pandemic had made Portland a ghost town after dark. 4 minutes and 23 seconds into the ride, the passenger reached for a water bottle. He pulled his mask down briefly to drink. The Dashcam captured his face for exactly 3 seconds before the mask went back up. Just a glimpse. A man in his early 30s, nothing remarkable. The car continued west. At 11:56 p.m., Marcus's voice broke the silence. "Hey, mind if we make a quick stop? My friend lives nearby. Just need to grab something. 2 minutes." The passenger agreed. The car changed direction, heading north toward the Willamette River. Marcus was heading to Tyler Grant's apartment on North Willamette Boulevard. He needed to borrow money. $400 to be exact. What Marcus hadn't told Jenna, what he'd kept quiet in his careful, responsible way, was that 3 days earlier, on August 15th, he'd made a decision that now haunted him. He'd taken 2 items from their small collection of possessions, Jenna's gold wedding ring and a gold chain that had belonged to his grandmother. Both were locked in a small box in their closet. Jenna rarely wore the ring to work, afraid of losing it during her shifts. She wouldn't notice it was gone for a few days, maybe a week. Marcus told himself it was temporary. He'd get them back. He just needed quick cash for a laptop. A video interview was scheduled for August 25th with a startup company. His current laptop's camera was broken. He couldn't show up to his dream job interview with a blurry image. Marcus had found a buyer through whispers in the driver community. Someone who dealt in gold, no questions asked. A man who went by Red Dave, though his actual name was David Marks. 33 years old, with a minor record for dealing in stolen goods from 2017. Marcus met him on August 15th at a bar on Southeast Division Street. Marks examined the pieces under a jeweler's loupe, weighed them, and counted out $800 in cash. Marcus's hands shook as he took the money. Marcus's handshake was firm. "Pleasure doing business." Marcus drove home feeling sick. But by August 17th, Jenna had noticed. "Have you seen my ring?" she'd asked casually, checking the bathroom counter. Marcus had frozen. Maybe in the bedroom? His voice sounded wrong even to himself. That night, while Jenna slept, Marcus had sat in the dark living room, his head in his hands. He had to get them back. He texted Marks. Need to buy back the items. Can pay $200. Marks had replied within minutes. Sure. Meet me at the warehouse on North Ledbetter Road. Midnight. Bring cash. Marcus didn't have $1,200. He had the $800 from Marks, plus $200 in their checking account he could withdraw without raising alarms. He needed $400 more. That's when he'd messaged Tyler Grant. They'd texted privately, outside the group chat. Tyler had agreed to loan him the money, said Marcus could stop by that night to pick it up. Tyler lived alone, worked odd hours, wouldn't ask too many questions. Good guy. At 11:38 p.m., Marcus arrived at Tyler's apartment building. Tyler came down to the car, handed over $400 in 20s through the window. You good, man? Tyler asked. Marcus nodded. Thanks. I'll get this back to you this week. Tyler shrugged. No rush. The entire interaction took 4 minutes. Marcus drove away. Now, with a passenger in the back seat, Marcus was retracing his route. But something felt off. The passenger had agreed too easily to the detour. Hadn't asked why. Hadn't complained about the fare increasing. Just sat quietly, looking out the window. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. The man's eyes were visible above the mask. They were watching him. The GPS on Marcus's phone showed the route to the warehouse. North Ledbetter Road was in an industrial area near the Columbia River, a stretch of old buildings and vacant lots where businesses had died during the recession and never returned. It was the kind of place where transactions happened in cash, where no one asked names. Marcus had never been there before. Marks had chosen the location. At 12:02 a.m. on August 19th, Marcus's Toyota Camry pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse. The headlights swept across broken asphalt and weeds pushing through cracks. A single vehicle was already there, a white van with its lights off. Marcus recognized it from his meeting 3 days earlier. That was Marks's vehicle. Marcus put the car in park, but left the engine running. He turned to the passenger. This'll just be a minute. The passenger said nothing. Marcus stepped out into the cool August night. The air smelled like river water and motor oil. Marks emerged from the van, a small envelope in his hand. Got what you need, Marks called out. Marcus approached, the $1,200 folded in his pocket. The transaction took less than 3 minutes. Marks handed over the envelope. Marcus checked inside. The gold wedding ring caught the moonlight. The chain coiled beneath it. Relief washed over him. He counted out the cash. Marks counted it twice, nodded, and climbed back into his van. The engine started. The van's taillights disappeared into the darkness. Marcus returned to his car. The passenger hadn't moved. All good? The man asked. Marcus nodded, sliding the envelope into the center console. Yeah, thanks for your patience. He put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road. The GPS recalculated. Northwest Portland was still the destination, but first Marcus wanted to return Tyler's money immediately. He couldn't stand owing debts. At 12:23 a.m., Marcus pulled up outside Tyler's apartment again. One more quick stop, he told the passenger, returning something to my friend. This time, Marcus asked the passenger if he wanted to come up. It's cold out here. The passenger agreed. They walked up the exterior stairs to Tyler's second-floor unit. Marcus knocked. Tyler answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly ready for bed. Hey, man, got your money back. Marcus handed him $400. Tyler took it, noticed the passenger standing in the hallway, nodded politely. Thanks, Marcus. The interaction lasted less than 90 seconds. They walked back down to the car. As Marcus pulled away from Tyler's building, he felt lighter. The jewelry was safe in his console. Jenna would never know. Tomorrow he'd put the ring back in the box. Life would return to normal. He glanced at the clock. 12:27 a.m. This ride was taking forever, but the fare would be worth it. He'd probably earned $60 so far, maybe more with the wait time charges. He merged onto the main road toward downtown Portland. That's when Marcus made a mistake. Sitting at a red light, he pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with news notifications. He scrolled absently. A headline caught his eye. Escaped prisoner still at large, $15,000 reward. The article was 3 days old. It showed a police sketch and a mugshot. David Crow, 29 years old. Escaped from custody on August 15th during a courthouse transfer. Wanted for assaulting a police officer. Considered dangerous. Marcus studied the face. Something about it was familiar. The shape of the jaw. The eyes. He looked up into the rearview mirror. The passenger was looking out the window, his mask still covering most of his face. But the visible features matched. Marcus's heart rate spiked. Was he looking at a fugitive? Was there really $15,000 sitting in his back seat? That money could change everything. No more night shifts, full-time studies, maybe even a down payment on a small house. His thumb hovered over his phone. Should he call? What if he was wrong? What if he wasn't? Marcus opened the Crime Stoppers app. He'd downloaded it months ago after reading about rewards for information. The app loaded slowly. The light turned green. Marcus accelerated, his eyes flicking between the road and his phone. The passenger's reflection in the mirror. That jawline. Those eyes. It had to be him. Marcus found the number. He pressed dial. The phone began to connect. "Wait," the passenger said. His voice had changed. Harder. "I know what you're doing." Marcus's blood went cold. The call was connecting. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Put the phone down." Marcus's hand was shaking. "You're him. You're David Crow." The passenger leaned forward. "You're making a big mistake." What happened in the next 40 seconds would remain partially unclear for 4 years. The dashcam recorded audio. Raised voices. Marcus saying, "I'm calling the police." The passenger responding, "You really shouldn't." Then sounds of movement, the sharp intake of breath, the phone clattering. The image on the dashcam jolted violently as something struck the windshield mount. The camera tore free from its suction cup. The video frame spun, captured a blur of motion, and then showed only the car's ceiling at an angle. The audio continued for another 6 seconds. Fabric against fabric. Heavy breathing. Then silence. The timestamp read 12:31:47 a.m. before the recording ended. The SD card, dislodged when the dashcam was torn from its mount, had fallen onto the back seat. In the chaos, it slipped through a gap between the cushion and backrest, sliding deep into the frame where no casual search would find it. The card would remain there, a digital witness, as the car changed hands, was impounded, auctioned, and finally sent to salvage. 4 years, 1,461 days, until Jose Martinez's fingers found it. August 19th, 2020, 7:30 in the morning. Jenna Cheng's shift at a manual hospital ended at 7. She'd changed out of her scrubs, driven home through quiet streets, expecting to find Marcus asleep in bed. The apartment was empty. His side of the bed was still made from yesterday. His phone charger lay on the nightstand, unused. Jenna called his number. It rang once, then went silent. She called again. Voicemail. She opened the Find My iPhone app. Marcus's phone showed a location near Lloyd Center Mall, but the status said offline. Last seen at 12:47 a.m. By 8 o'clock, Jenna stood in the police station lobby, filling out a missing person report. The desk officer took down the information with practiced efficiency. Name, age, physical description, last known location. "Does your husband have any reason to leave?" the officer asked. Jenna shook her head firmly. Marcus would never just disappear. Something happened. The officer nodded and said a detective would be in touch. She handed Jenna a case number on a small card. Detective Robert Holmes arrived at his desk at 8:45, coffee in hand, ready for another day of following leads that went nowhere. The missing person report sat on top of his inbox. Marcus Cheng, 34, Uber driver, disappeared during night shift. Holmes read through the details twice. Something about it felt wrong. Family men didn't vanish mid-shift, not without reason. He picked up his desk phone and dialed Jenna Cheng's number. When Holmes arrived at the Cheng's apartment at 9:30, Jenna was pacing. She'd barely slept. She showed Holmes the Find My iPhone location. "He's at Lloyd Center, or his phone is." Holmes made a note. "We'll send a patrol to check. Does Marcus have the Uber app on his phone?" Jenna pulled out her own phone and logged into their shared Apple account. She navigated to Marcus's phone, found the Uber driver app. Holmes leaned in to look at the screen. The last completed trip ended at 11:31 p.m. A new trip had been accepted at 11:47 p.m. Passenger name, David M. Status, in progress. Except it was now almost 10 o'clock in the morning. No trip lasted 10 hours. Holmes made 3 phone calls. First, to patrol officers to check the Lloyd Center parking lot for Marcus's silver Toyota Camry, Oregon plates. Second, to Uber's law enforcement liaison requesting all data on the David M. account and GPS tracking for Marcus's active trip. Third, to his partner, asking her to pull traffic camera footage from Southeast 82nd and Division Street around midnight. Then he sat down with Jenna and asked her to walk him through Marcus's life. Who were his friends? Any enemies? Money problems? Jenna talked for an hour. She mentioned Tyler Grant, another Uber driver Marcus chatted with sometimes. She showed Holmes their text messages, the last one from Marcus, sent at 10:51 p.m. to a group chat. Quiet night tonight, few more trips, and home. Normal. Routine. No distress. At 2:20 in the afternoon, Holmes received a call. "Detective, we found the vehicle." The patrol officer's voice was calm but careful. "Lloyd Center parking lot, far corner. Engine still running. Gas tank almost empty. Driver's door is closed. No one inside." Holmes told them to secure the scene and not to touch anything. He was there in 15 minutes. The silver Camry sat alone in a section of parking lot where legitimate shoppers never ventured. Holmes approached slowly, taking in the scene. The engine was indeed running, a soft idle that had been going for hours. He peered through the driver's window. The front seat was empty. On the passenger seat lay a smartphone, screen down. Holmes pulled on latex gloves and carefully opened the driver's door. He picked up the phone. It was unlocked, but the battery was dead. The charging cable was still plugged into the cigarette lighter port, but the phone wasn't connected. Holmes plugged in the cable. The phone vibrated and showed a charging symbol. While it powered up, he examined the rest of the car's interior. The dashcam mount on the windshield was empty, the suction cup still attached, but the cable dangling loose, torn at the connection point. Holmes bagged the cable as evidence. The car was otherwise remarkably clean. No signs of struggle in the front seat, no blood, no damage. It looked like the driver had simply stepped out and walked away. When the phone powered on, Holmes saw dozens of missed calls from Jenna. The lock screen showed the time of last activity, 11:53 p.m. Holmes pressed the home button. The phone was still unlocked. He navigated to recent apps. The last app opened was Crime Stoppers. The call log showed an attempted call to 911 at 11:53 p.m., duration 2 seconds. The call had been interrupted. Holmes photographed everything before the phone locked itself again. The forensics team arrived at 3. They processed the vehicle methodically. Fingerprints on the steering wheel matched Marcus's prints from his driver's license application. Fingerprints on the door handles, both interior and exterior, were smudged beyond recognition. The rear passenger area showed signs of recent occupancy, but no clear prints. They found a small envelope in the center console. Inside was a gold wedding ring engraved with a date, February 14, 2018. Jenna's ring. Holmes bagged it carefully. Why did Marcus have his wife's ring in the car? By evening, Uber's legal team had responded with data. The account David M. was created on August 17, 2020, less than 24 hours before the ride. Registration used a burner email address and a prepaid Visa card purchased with cash at a convenience store. Untraceable. The account had only been used once. The pickup location was confirmed as Southeast 82nd and Division. But the GPS tracking data was more interesting. Holmes spread a map across his desk and traced the route with his finger. The car had traveled west on Division initially, then turned north toward the river. At 11:38 p.m., it stopped at an apartment building on North Willamette Boulevard for 4 minutes. Holmes recognized the address. He cross-referenced it with Tyler Grant's information from Jenna. That was Tyler's building. The car then continued to an industrial area near the Columbia River. At 12:02 a.m., it stopped in the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse on North Ledbetter Road for 8 minutes. After that, the car returned to North Willamette Boulevard, stopping at Tyler's building again at 12:23 a.m. for 3 minutes. Finally, the car headed southeast toward downtown, its last GPS ping at 12:47 a.m. near Lloyd Center before the signal went dark. Holmes studied the timeline. Marcus had stopped at Tyler's place twice. Why? And what happened at that warehouse? He dispatched officers to check the warehouse location. Then he called Tyler Grant. Tyler answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Hello?" It was 8 p.m., but Tyler had been sleeping after his own night shift. Holmes identified himself and asked if they could meet. Tyler agreed immediately, his voice now alert with concern. "Is this about Marcus? Jenna called me this afternoon. She said he's missing." 20 minutes later, Tyler sat across from Holmes in an interview room at the police bureau. Tyler was 28, thin with dark circles under his eyes from irregular sleep schedules. He confirmed he'd seen Marcus twice the previous night. First time was around 11:30. He needed to borrow $400. Said it was urgent. I gave it to him, no questions. Second time was maybe an hour later, around 12:30. He came back to return the money. That fast. I thought it was weird, but Marcus was always responsible about debts. Holmes leaned forward. Was he alone the second time? Tyler shook his head. No, there was a guy with him. Passenger, I guess. Stood in my hallway while Marcus handed me the cash. Didn't say anything. Wore a baseball cap and mask, so I couldn't really see his face. Average height, maybe 5'10" or 11. Dark jacket. Holmes showed Tyler a photo of David Crow from the fugitive alert. Could this have been him? Tyler studied it carefully. Maybe. I don't know. I only saw him for like 30 seconds in bad lighting. Holmes asked why Marcus needed $400 so urgently. Tyler hesitated. He mentioned something in our group chat a few days ago, asked if anyone knew where to sell gold jewelry quickly, said he needed money for equipment. I told him to be careful with those buyers. Holmes made a note. That explained the wedding ring. Marcus had sold it and was buying it back. But to whom? The next morning, August 20th, officers reported back from the warehouse location. The parking lot was empty, but they'd found tire tracks, fresh within the last few days. And something else. Near where the tracks converged, half buried in gravel, was a stainless steel medical alert bracelet. The engraving read, David Crow, Allergy, Penicillin. Holmes felt his pulse quicken. He pulled up the fugitive alert on his computer. David Crow, 29 years old, escaped from custody on August 15th during transport to courthouse. Wanted for assaulting a police officer during a bar fight arrest. Considered dangerous. Current whereabouts unknown. Reward of $15,000 for information leading to capture. The alert noted Crow wore a medical alert bracelet due to severe penicillin allergy. The pieces started forming a picture. Marcus had picked up a passenger. At some point, Marcus had recognized him as the fugitive from news reports. Marcus had tried to call 911 to claim the reward money. The passenger, Crow, had reacted violently. But what happened after that? And how did Crow's bracelet end up at the warehouse? Holmes issued an APB for David Crow, Priority 1, wanted in connection with a possible abduction. He sent Crow's photo to every patrol officer, every neighboring jurisdiction, every bus and train station. He checked hotel registries, homeless shelters, known associates. Crow's mother lived in Vancouver, Washington. Officers were dispatched to watch her house. Crow's ex-girlfriend lived in Northeast Portland. She was interviewed. She said she hadn't seen or heard from Crow since his arrest 3 months earlier. On August 21st, a security camera at the Greyhound bus station downtown showed a man matching Crow's description purchasing a ticket to Seattle on August 19th at 6:30 in the morning. The timestamp was 6 hours after Marcus's phone went dark. The man wore a mask and cap, paid cash, and boarded the 7 a.m. bus. Seattle police were notified. They began searching their jurisdiction. Jenna Cheng called Holmes every day. "Have you found anything?" Her voice grew thinner each time. Holmes told her they were following leads, that they were doing everything possible. He didn't tell her about the bracelet or the fugitive connection. Not yet. Not until he had something concrete. On September 2nd, 2 weeks after Marcus disappeared, Holmes received the call he'd been waiting for. Seattle police had arrested David Crow attempting to shoplift from a grocery store in the University District. Crow was being held on his original warrant. Holmes drove to Seattle that afternoon with a colleague. They brought Crow back to Portland that evening in handcuffs. September 3rd, Interview Room 2. David Crow sat across the table from Holmes. Crow was 29 but looked older, his face gaunt from 2 weeks on the run. His right wrist bore the pale line where his medical bracelet had been. Holmes placed the bracelet on the table between them. "Recognize this?" Crow glanced at it. "Yeah, that's mine. Lost it somewhere." His voice was rough, defensive. Holmes asked where Crow had been on the night of August 18th. Crow's jaw tightened. "Why?" Holmes explained that a man had gone missing, that evidence placed Crow at the scene. Crow leaned back in his chair. "I didn't hurt anybody." But he admitted he'd been in Portland that night. "I was hiding out at a buddy's place, Marco Santos, up on North Interstate Avenue. Stayed there from the 15th to the 19th. Only went out once, on the 18th, to buy food at the corner store. 20 minutes, in and out." Holmes verified the story. Marco Santos, 31, had a minor record for drug possession. He confirmed Crow had stayed with him. "Yeah, Dave was here. We watched movies, drank beer. He was paranoid about getting caught. Barely left the apartment." Security footage from the corner store showed Crow at 11:35 p.m. on August 18th, purchasing beer and chips. His face was partially visible, and more importantly, his neck tattoo was visible, a distinctive tribal design that ran from his collarbone to his jaw. The timestamp proved Crow was 15 minutes away from Southeast 82nd and Division at the exact moment Marcus had picked up his passenger. Holmes stared at the monitor showing the store footage. The timeline didn't work. Crow couldn't have been in 2 places at once. So who was the passenger in Marcus's car? And how did Crow's bracelet end up at the warehouse? Crow offered a theory. "Maybe somebody found my bracelet and planted it to frame me? I lost it a couple days after I got to Portland. Probably dropped it somewhere when I was buying clothes at a thrift shop." Holmes checked. There was indeed a second-hand clothing store on North Interstate, 2 blocks from Marco's apartment. The owner vaguely remembered someone trying on jackets a few days prior, but couldn't provide details. Holmes was back to square one. The passenger wasn't David Crow. The bracelet was a false lead, probably planted deliberately to misdirect the investigation. But planted by whom? Holmes returned to the GPS data. He focused on the warehouse stop. If Marcus had gone there for a purpose, who was he meeting? He interviewed Jenna again, asking specifically about Marcus's finances. That's when she mentioned finding a receipt. She'd been cleaning the apartment, desperate for anything to do, when she found it in Marcus's jeans pocket. A handwritten receipt dated August 15th. Received $800 for gold items. No signature, no business name, just $800. Jenna had been confused. They didn't have $800. And what gold items? Holmes asked if anything was missing from their home. Jenna checked their small jewelry box. Her wedding ring was there now, in the envelope found in Marcus's car, but she didn't remember putting it there. Then she realized, I haven't seen my ring since last week. I thought I'd misplaced it. Did Marcus sell my ring? Her voice cracked. Holmes confirmed that was likely. The question was why and to whom. He started asking around Portland's small community of gold buyers, both legal and otherwise. Most legitimate dealers kept records and wouldn't touch potentially hot items. But there was an underground market. By September 5th, Holmes had a name, David Marks, known locally as Red Dave due to his auburn hair. 33 years old, arrested in 2017 for receiving stolen property, served 6 months. Known to operate out of bars and meet clients in parking lots. Holmes found him at a bar on Southeast Division Street. Marks was nervous when Holmes sat down next to him. I haven't done anything. Holmes showed him a photo of Marcus. Ever seen this man? Marks glanced at it, then away. Maybe. I see a lot of people. Holmes leaned in. He's missing. Last place his car was tracked was near a warehouse where you do business. I've got surveillance video of his vehicle. I can connect you to him. Or you can tell me what happened and maybe I don't look too hard at your current operation. Marks cracked. Okay, yeah. Asian guy came to me on the 15th. Sold me a ring and a chain. $800 cash. Quality stuff. Probably family heirlooms. I asked if it was stolen. He swore it wasn't. Said he was in a bind. I gave him the money. Holmes asked if Marks had seen Marcus again. Marks hesitated too long. I want a lawyer. Holmes arrested him on suspicion of receiving stolen property and brought him to the station. After 6 hours in holding and consultation with a public defender, Marks changed his story. Okay, yeah, he came back on the 18th, evening time, said his wife noticed the ring was gone and he was panicking. Wanted to buy everything back. Offered $1,200. I agreed because the markup was good. Told him to meet me at midnight at the warehouse on Ledbetter Road. Quiet place, nobody around. Holmes leaned forward. Did he show up? Marks nodded. Yeah, right on time. Maybe 5 after midnight. But here's the thing. He wasn't alone. Had a passenger with him, some guy in a baseball cap. Marcus said it was a friend who loaned him money. They seemed normal. I gave him the jewelry, took the cash, left. That's it. That's all I know. Describe the passenger. Marks shrugged. Average height, dark clothes, wearing a mask. Didn't really see his face. He stayed by the car mostly. Marcus did all the talking. Holmes showed him the photo of David Crow again. Was it this man? Marks studied it. Could be. I don't know, man. Everyone looks the same in masks. Holmes pressed harder. What time did you leave? Marks said 12:10. And they drove off? Marks confirmed. Yeah, they left right after me. Everything was fine. But Holmes knew from GPS that Marcus's car had stayed at the warehouse for 8 minutes. If Marks left at 12:10, something else had happened in those remaining few minutes. Marks was lying or didn't know the full story. By September 8th, Holmes had retraced every step of Marcus's final known movements. The problem was the 2 hours between 12:30 a.m., when Marcus returned Tyler's money, and 12:47 a.m., when his phone went offline. What happened in those 17 minutes? The GPS showed the car had driven toward downtown Portland. Then the signal disappeared near Lloyd Center. Someone had turned off Marcus's phone, or it had died. Someone had driven his car to that parking lot and left it running. Holmes examined the GPS route one more time. He noticed something he'd missed before. After leaving Tyler's apartment at 12:26 a.m., the car hadn't gone directly toward downtown. It had made a brief circle through the neighborhood, almost like the driver was unfamiliar with the area. Then it headed southeast. But there was a 3-minute stop. Holmes zoomed in on the map. The stop was on a residential street, North Willamette Boulevard, the same street as Tyler's building but 3 blocks south. Why stop there? Holmes drove to the location at 1 a.m., matching the approximate time. The street was dark, lined with parked cars and apartment buildings. Nothing special, no businesses, no landmarks. He was about to leave when he realized he was only 2 blocks from Tyler Grant's building. Could Marcus have returned a third time? But why? September 10th. Holmes knocked on Tyler's door at 9 p.m. when he knew Tyler would be awake. "Sorry to bother you again. Can you walk me through that night one more time?" They sat in Tyler's small living room. Holmes had Tyler describe both visits in detail. After the second visit, around 12:25 a.m., Tyler said Marcus and the passenger had left. "I went back to bed, but—" Tyler paused. "Actually, about 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang again. I thought Marcus forgot something." Holmes sat forward. "What happened?" Tyler said he'd opened the door expecting Marcus. But it was just the passenger, alone. No Marcus. I asked where Marcus was. The guy said Marcus asked him to come back, that Marcus had left a jacket or something. But I didn't have any jacket. Then he asked me something weird. What did he ask? Tyler remembered clearly because it had stuck with him. He asked if I had the prepaid card he'd used to pay for the Uber. Said he'd accidentally given it to me with the cash. I told him I didn't have any card. He got pushy, started raising his voice. I got scared and closed the door. Locked it. He left after a minute. Holmes felt pieces clicking together. Did you notice anything else about him? Tyler said the man had seemed agitated, nervous. And his voice was different. When he was with Marcus earlier, he barely spoke. But this time he was talking more, and he sounded, I don't know, rougher. Working-class accent, maybe. The next morning, Holmes asked Tyler to check his apartment thoroughly for anything that didn't belong to him. Tyler searched for 20 minutes. In his bedroom closet, hanging among his clothes, was a dark jacket he'd never seen before. In the pocket was a prepaid Visa card. Holmes bagged both items. The card's number matched the one used to pay for Marcus's final Uber ride. Tyler was confused. How did that get here? I didn't put it there. Holmes asked about Tyler's locks. Tyler admitted they were old, basic deadbolts. I usually don't even lock the top lock unless I'm leaving for a while. That night after the guy knocked, I locked both, but before that, Marcus had a key to the building from when he helped me move in. He never gave it back. Holmes understood now. Someone had returned to Tyler's apartment, had access to the building, and had planted evidence. The prepaid card, the jacket, maybe the baseball cap Tyler mentioned seeing. These items were meant to implicate Tyler if the investigation ever got this far. It was clever, calculated, not the work of a panicked fugitive like David Crow. This was someone else, someone methodical. On September 11th, Holmes obtained a warrant to search David Marks's apartment and vehicle. Marks had been released on bail but was under surveillance. The search turned up nothing directly related to Marcus. But in Marks's phone records, Holmes found something interesting. On August 17th, Marks had created a new email account. On August 18th at 11:43 p.m., 4 minutes before Marcus accepted the ride request, that email had been used to register the Uber account David M. The IP address traced to Marks's phone. Holmes brought Marks in again. This time, the evidence was clearer. You weren't meeting Marcus at the warehouse. You were the passenger in his car. Marks's lawyer objected, but Holmes laid out the timeline. You created the fake account. You called the Uber specifically to get Marcus's car. Why? Marks sat silently for 3 minutes. Finally, he spoke. "I want a deal." His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Marks ignored him. "I'll tell you everything, but I want immunity for the gold buying. And I want second degree, not first, because it was an accident. It wasn't supposed to happen." Holmes made no promises but nodded for him to continue. David Marks began talking at 3:15 in the afternoon on September 11, 2020. Detective Holmes sat across from him, recording device running, witness present. What Marks described over the next 2 hours would solve the mystery of Marcus Cheng's disappearance, but the full truth wouldn't emerge for another 4 years, when a salvage worker found a micro SD card wedged in a car seat. Marks started at the beginning, August 16, 2020. He'd gone to a second-hand clothing store on North Interstate Avenue, looking for a jacket. While browsing the racks, he'd found a stainless steel medical alert bracelet on a shelf left behind by a previous customer. He'd read the name engraved on it. David Crow. The same name plastered across every news channel. The escaped fugitive. Marks had pocketed the bracelet, thinking it might be useful somehow. Insurance, he called it. 2 days later, on August 18th, Marcus had called asking to buy back the jewelry. Marks had been sitting in his usual bar on Southeast Division Street when the call came through at 10:30 p.m. He'd agreed to meet at midnight at the warehouse. After hanging up, Marks had a drink, then another. Around 11:30, he'd stepped outside for a cigarette. That's when he saw the silver Toyota Camry pull up across the street, dropping off a passenger. Marks had recognized Marcus behind the wheel. An idea had formed. Marks was bored. The night was slow. Why not have some fun? He'd pulled out his phone and created a fake Uber account using a burner email. Name, David M., his own initials. He'd registered a prepaid Visa card he kept for untraceable transactions. Then he'd requested a ride, entering a random address in Northwest Portland as the destination. When he saw Marcus's car was the one that accepted, Marks had smiled. The odds were astronomical, but there it was. "I just wanted to mess with him a little," Marks told Holmes. "Ride along to the warehouse, reveal who I was, have a laugh. That's all. I wasn't planning anything." Holmes listened without expression. Marks continued. At 11:49 p.m., Marks had gotten into the back of Marcus's car, wearing a baseball cap and medical mask. Marcus hadn't recognized him. They'd driven west, making small talk. Marks had given turn-by-turn directions toward the warehouse, claiming they were headed to Northwest Portland. About 4 minutes in, Marks had pulled down his mask briefly to drink from a water bottle. Just a moment. Then the mask went back up. Marcus had been focused on driving. Around 11:56, Marcus had asked if they could make a quick stop at a friend's place. Marks had agreed easily. They'd pulled up to Tyler Grant's apartment building. Marcus had gone inside for a few minutes, come back with cash. Marks hadn't thought much of it. Then they'd driven to the warehouse. Marcus had parked, gotten out, completed his transaction with the envelope and cash. Everything normal. Marks had stayed in the car, watching. When Marcus returned with the jewelry, they'd headed back toward Tyler's building. Marcus had wanted to return borrowed money immediately. Again, Marks had agreed. They'd gone up to Tyler's apartment. The interaction had been brief. Marks had stood in the hallway, face mostly hidden by his cap and mask. Tyler had barely glanced at him. They'd returned to the car. It was 12:27 a.m. when things changed. Marcus had been driving toward downtown, still planning to complete the ride to Northwest Portland. He'd been scrolling through his phone at a red light. Marks had been looking out the window, half asleep, thinking about what he'd do with the $1,200 profit from the jewelry markup. Then Marcus had spoken. "Wait, I've seen you somewhere." Marks had looked up. Marcus was staring at him in the rearview mirror. "You're that guy from the news, David Crow, right? The escaped prisoner." Marks had felt ice in his stomach. He'd started to say no, but Marcus was already opening an app on his phone. Crime Stoppers. The screen showed a reward notice, $15,000. "I need this money," Marcus had said, almost apologetically. His thumb hovered over the dial button for 911. Marks had panicked, not because he was Crow, but because of what would happen if police arrived. They'd search him, find the jewelry, trace it back to the stolen goods operation he'd been running for years. Everything would unravel. "Don't call the cops," Marks had said sharply. "I'm not who you think I am." But Marcus was dialing. The call was connecting. Marks had lunged forward between the seats, grabbing for the phone. Marcus had pulled away, the car swerving. They'd been on a dark stretch of road near industrial buildings. Marcus had hit the brakes, stopped the car, gotten out still clutching his phone. Marks had jumped out after him. "Give me the phone. I'm not Crow. You're making a mistake." Marcus had backed away, holding the phone to his ear. The call was ringing. Marks could hear it. In desperation, he'd grabbed the dash cam from the windshield. If police came, the camera would have footage of their entire conversation, of Marks getting into the car, of the warehouse meeting. All evidence. He'd yanked hard. The mount tore free, the cable snapping. The camera dangled in his hand. "What are you doing?" Marcus had demanded. He'd moved toward Marks, trying to grab the camera back. They'd struggled. Marcus was smaller, but desperate. The $15,000 represented everything to him. A new life. Marks was stronger, but terrified. Prison represented everything he'd avoided. They'd grappled in the middle of the empty street. "Then he fell," Marks told Holmes, his voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "I pushed him away, and he stumbled backward, hit his head on the curb. There was this sound, like a crack. He just dropped." Marks had stood there, breathing hard, the dash cam still in his hand. Marcus lay on the asphalt, not moving. "I said his name. Nothing. I checked his pulse. Nothing. I didn't mean to. It was an accident." Holmes asked what happened next. Marks said he'd panicked completely. "I knew how it looked. Ex-con kills guy during a robbery. Nobody would believe it was an accident. I had to make it disappear." He'd looked around. The street was deserted. No cameras, no witnesses, just empty warehouses and darkness. Marks had made decisions quickly. He couldn't leave Marcus there. Too exposed. He'd looked at Marcus's phone, lying on the ground. The 911 call had never connected, just 2 seconds of ringing. Marks had picked it up, ended the call, and placed it on the driver's seat of the Camry. Make it look like Marcus had simply left his car. Then Marks had remembered the medical alert bracelet in his pocket. David Crow's bracelet. An idea formed. He'd driven Marcus's car back to the warehouse parking lot, planted the bracelet near the tire tracks. If anyone investigated, they'd think Crow was involved. A fugitive, violent, desperate. Perfect scapegoat. After that, Marks had driven to Lloyd Center, a shopping mall with a huge parking lot where a single car wouldn't be noticed for hours or days. He'd left the engine running, hoping it would drain the battery and confuse the timeline. He'd wiped down surfaces where he might have left prints, though he'd been wearing gloves most of the time anyway. Then he'd walked to the edge of the parking lot and called another Uber using his real account. A different driver had picked him up and taken him home. It was nearly 2 a.m, but Marks hadn't been done. He'd realized Tyler Grant had seen him, even if only briefly. Tyler could identify his height, build, maybe his voice. More importantly, Tyler knew Marcus had been with a passenger that night. Marks needed to redirect suspicion. Around 2:30 a.m., exhausted but wired on adrenaline, he'd walked back to Tyler's apartment building. He'd tried the main door. It was unlocked, as many Portland buildings were. He'd gone up to Tyler's floor. First, he'd knocked, pretending to be looking for something Marcus had left behind. Tyler had been suspicious and hadn't opened the door fully. Marks had improvised, asking about the prepaid card. Tyler had said no and closed the door. Marks had heard the deadbolt click. But he'd waited 30 minutes in the stairwell, listening. Eventually, silence. He'd tried Tyler's doorknob. Locked, but it was an old lock. Marks had criminal skills from his past. He'd used a credit card to slip the bolt, open the door quietly, and place the dark jacket and prepaid Visa card in Tyler's closet. If investigators ever connected the dots, they'd find evidence pointing at Tyler Grant. Finally, Marks had taken the Dashcam home. He'd disassembled it in his kitchen, smashing the camera lens with a hammer, pulling out the internal memory. He'd thought he'd destroyed everything. What he hadn't realized was that the SD card had already fallen out during the struggle in Marcus's car. The card was still there, hidden in the seat, recording nothing more, but preserving everything that mattered. Holmes asked the crucial question, "Where is Marcus Cheng now?" Marks gave coordinates. A location 15 miles southeast of Portland, in a densely forested area near a hiking trail that was rarely used. Marks had driven there the next night, August 20th, and left Marcus there. "I'm sorry," Marks said, though his voice carried more fear than remorse. "I never wanted this. It was an accident that got out of control." Holmes arrested David Marks for second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. By the next morning, September 12th, search and recovery teams had located Marcus Cheng's remains exactly where Marks had described. The medical examiner confirmed cause of death: blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with a fall. Time of death: approximately 12:30 a.m. on August 19, 2020. Jenna Cheng received the news in the presence of a victim advocate. She'd held out hope for 3 weeks that Marcus was somehow alive, amnesia, or kidnapped, or anything but dead. The reality crushed that hope. Her husband had died trying to claim a reward to pay for a laptop for a job interview. He'd died because someone had panicked. He died alone on a dark street while she'd been checking a patient's blood pressure at the hospital. She didn't scream. She didn't cry immediately. She just sat very still and said, "I want to see him." The funeral was held on September 28, 2020. A small service. Marcus's body was cremated. Jenna returned to work 2 weeks later because she couldn't afford not to. She moved out of their apartment in December. Too many memories. Tyler Grant attended the funeral and tried to apologize to Jenna for having his apartment used as part of the cover-up, though that made no sense. "I should have seen something," he'd said. Jenna had just nodded blankly. David Marks went to trial in March 2021. His defense argued for manslaughter, claiming no intent to kill. The prosecution pushed for second-degree murder, emphasizing the elaborate cover-up. The jury deliberated for 2 days. They found Marks guilty of criminally negligent homicide and multiple counts of evidence tampering. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in prison. Marks showed no emotion as the sentence was read. Detective Holmes closed the case file on March 30, 2021. He'd recovered the victim. He'd found the perpetrator. Justice had been served, at least in the legal sense. But something bothered him. The Dashcam. Marks had insisted he'd destroyed it completely. Yet the mount was still in the car, the cable torn, but present. Holmes had searched Marks's apartment and found pieces of the camera body, but no SD card. He'd assumed Marks had thrown it away, or truly destroyed it. The case was closed. The card was forgotten. 4 years passed. Jenna Cheng tried to rebuild a life. She left nursing, unable to handle the night shifts that reminded her of the night Marcus died. She worked in medical records instead, day shifts, regular hours. She started seeing a therapist in 2022. She went on a date in 2023, though it didn't lead anywhere. She thought about Marcus every single day, but the sharp pain dulled into a persistent ache. Tyler Grant moved to San Diego in 2021. He never drove for Uber again. He took a job in customer service for a tech company, working from home. He was good at it, anonymous, no face-to-face interactions, safe. Detective Holmes retired in 2023 at age 64. He'd spent 43 years in law enforcement. He'd solved hundreds of cases. Marcus Cheng's case was filed in a box in his home office along with dozens of others. solved but not forgotten. David Crow, the fugitive whose identity had been mistaken, served his sentence for the original assault charge. He was released in 2022. He never knew that his lost medical bracelet had briefly made him the prime suspect in an unrelated death. David Marks sat in prison. His earliest parole eligibility was 2033. He rarely thought about Marcus Cheng. When he did, he told himself it was an accident. Bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. He'd only been trying to protect himself. People made mistakes. The silver Toyota Camry had been impounded as evidence during the trial. After the conviction, it was released from the police lot. Jenna Cheng didn't want it. Too painful. The vehicle was sold at a police auction in April 2021 to a used car dealer who sold it to a college student in May. The student drove it for 2 years before selling it to another buyer. That buyer kept it for a year before the transmission failed. The cost of repair exceeded the car's value. In March 2024, the car was sold for parts to a salvage yard in Gresham. The salvage yard let vehicles sit for months before processing them. On June 12, 2024, Jose Martinez was assigned to dismantle the Camry. He'd been working at the yard for 6 years. The job was repetitive, but paid okay. He removed seats methodically, checking for anything valuable that might have been left behind. People forgot things: phones, jewelry, cash. In 6 years, Martinez had found 3 wedding rings, 2 handguns, and once a bag containing $4,000. When his fingers touched the SD card deep in the seat crack, he almost missed it. Just a small piece of plastic. He pulled it out, curious about what might be on it. Vacation photos? Music? He had a card reader in his phone case. He inserted the card. The phone took a moment to read it. Then video files appeared, dated August 18, 2020. Martinez tapped the first file. He saw a car's dashboard, a steering wheel, a man with dark hair driving. The timestamp said 11:43 p.m. Martinez almost deleted it, uninterested in random driving footage. But then a figure appeared on screen, opening the back door. Someone getting in. Martinez kept watching. 4 minutes in, the passenger pulled down his mask to drink water. Just a glimpse of a face. They drove, talked about the route. Normal conversation. 11 minutes into the recording, the tone changed. The driver said something. "Wait, I've seen you somewhere," the passenger replied. Then the driver said a name. David Crow. The fugitive. Martinez's eyes widened. The audio became tense. The word police, the sound of movement, shouting. The camera jolted violently, the image spinning. Fabric, motion, heavy breathing. Then silence. The video showed only the car's ceiling at an odd angle. The timestamp read 12:31:47 a.m. Then it ended. Martinez's hands were shaking. He called his supervisor. 20 minutes later, he was at the Gresham Police Department, handing over the SD card. The officer who took his statement recognized the date. August 2020. Marcus Cheng case. Solved case, convicted perpetrator. But new evidence was new evidence. The SD card was logged and sent to Portland Police Bureau's Major Crimes Unit. Detective Sarah Chen, who had taken over Holmes's caseload after his retirement, received the card on June 13th. She remembered the case vaguely. Uber driver killed by a gold dealer. Open and shut. Conviction secured. But she loaded the video anyway, curious. The footage played. She watched the entire 14 minutes. When it finished, she sat back in her chair. The video showed everything. The passenger's face at 4:23. Chen ran it through facial recognition software. The system processed for 3 minutes. Result? No match to David Crow. The facial structure was similar but distinct differences. Tattoo visible on Crow's neck in database photos was absent in the video. The passenger wasn't Crow, but Chen already knew that. The passenger was David Marks, convicted and imprisoned. What the video proved was intent, or lack thereof. Chen watched the confrontation again. Marcus's voice, "I'm not who you think I am." Marcus insisting he was Crow. The struggle over the phone, then the camera. It supported Marcus's testimony about mistaken identity and panic. But it also showed premeditation in other ways. Marcus had deliberately created a fake account, had deliberately gotten into Marcus's car. The accident had been preceded by calculated decisions. Chen wrote a supplemental report and filed the SD card as additional evidence. She called the prosecutor who had tried the case. They discussed whether the video changed anything legally. The conclusion, it didn't. Marcus had been convicted of criminally negligent homicide, which fit the video evidence. His sentence stood. The video was simply confirmation of what the trial had already established. But Chen thought someone should see it. She called Jenna Cheng. "We've recovered video footage from your husband's Dashcam. It shows the final minutes before the incident. You have a right to view it if you choose, but I want to warn you, it's difficult to watch." Jenna was silent for a long moment. Then she said yes. She needed to see it. 4 years of not knowing exactly what had happened. 4 years of imagining scenarios, each worse than the last. She needed the truth. On June 18, 2024, Jenna sat in a private room at the police bureau. Detective Chen sat beside her. A laptop was open on the table. "Are you ready?" Chen asked. Jenna nodded. Chen pressed play. Jenna watched her husband's final moments. She saw him smile at the passenger getting in, heard his voice, professional and kind as always, watched him check his phone at the red light, scroll through news, saw the moment his expression changed. Recognition, calculation, hope, that terrible hope that $15,000 represented. She heard him say David Crow's name, heard the panic in the passenger's voice, watched the camera tear away, heard the sounds. When the video ended, Jenna sat motionless. Chen asked if she was okay. Jenna shook her head slowly. "He thought he was doing the right thing, catching a criminal, earning money for us. He died trying to help." Her voice broke. "And it was all a mistake, the wrong person, a case of mistaken identity." She put her face in her hands. Chen gave her privacy. After 20 minutes, Jenna emerged from the room. Her eyes were red but dry. She'd cried herself out years ago. "Thank you for showing me," she said to Chen. "I needed to know. I needed to see his face. He wasn't scared at the end. He was determined. That was Marcus, always determined." Chen walked her to the exit. Jenna drove home alone. The news media picked up the story in late June. Missing dashcam footage recovered 4 years after driver's death. It made regional headlines. A few true crime podcasts covered it. Most noted the tragic irony. A man dies because he's mistaken for a fugitive, killed by someone who's mistaken for that same fugitive. Layers of misidentification. Several articles mentioned the $15,000 reward that Marcus had been trying to claim, money that would have changed his life, money that instead ended it. David Marks was informed about the video's discovery. His lawyer viewed it and confirmed it supported Marks's original testimony. Marks showed no interest in discussing it further. He had 14 years remaining on his sentence. The video changed nothing for him. In August 2024, on the 4th anniversary of Marcus's death, Jenna visited the location where his body had been found. It was a quiet spot in the woods, marked by nothing now. She stood there for an hour. She didn't cry. She'd accepted that Marcus was gone. But she hadn't accepted the unfairness. Good people shouldn't die over misunderstandings. Honest men shouldn't die trying to do the right thing. She returned to her car and drove back to the city. Life continued. It always did. The case was closed. The footage had been found. The truth was complete. Marcus Cheng, 34 years old, had died on August 19, 2020, at approximately 12:31 a.m. because he saw a face in his rearview mirror and made a mistake. Because someone else panicked and made worse decisions. Because a medical alert bracelet fell off someone's wrist in a thrift store and was picked up by the wrong person. Because of coincidence and bad luck and human error compounded over and over until tragedy was inevitable. Detective Holmes heard about the recovered footage through former colleagues. He thought about calling Jenna, but decided against it. What would he say? That justice had been served? It had, technically. That closure had been achieved? Perhaps. That Marcus's death meant something? It didn't. It was random and pointless, and exactly the kind of case that had made Holmes retire early. Some stories don't have satisfying endings. They just end. The micro SD card was filed in the evidence room. It would remain there permanently, a digital record of 14 minutes that changed lives and ended one. Technology had preserved what human memory would have distorted. The truth, complete and unvarnished, existed on that tiny piece of silicon and plastic. It had waited 4 years in darkness to be found. Now it would wait forever in a temperature-controlled room, available if ever needed again, which it wouldn't be. Marcus Cheng's name appears in databases. Victim of homicide, 2020. Solved case. His wife lives in Portland. His dream of becoming a programmer died with him. The laptop he'd sold his wife's ring to buy was never purchased. The job interview was never attended. Tyler Grant never returned the $400 Marcus had repaid that night. It sits in a savings account Tyler can't bring himself to touch. The warehouse on North Leadbetter Road was demolished in 2023. Luxury condominiums stand there now. The parking lot where Marcus met David Marks is covered by a fitness center. Lloyd Center Mall, where Marcus's car was found, closed in 2024, a victim of changing retail patterns. The building is scheduled for redevelopment. The corner of Southeast 82nd and Division, where Marcus picked up his final passenger, looks the same. Cars still pull up. Uber drivers still accept rides. None of them know what happened there. 4 years, 1,461 days, 15 months of investigation, 3 months of trial, 18-year sentence. 1 life ended. Multiple lives changed. 1 SD card holding all the answers, lost and then found. Too late to change anything, but just in time to confirm everything. The story of Marcus Cheng doesn't teach lessons. It doesn't warn against specific dangers. It simply exists, a record of how quickly everything can fall apart. How a decision to sell a wedding ring leads to a decision to buy it back, leads to a decision to create a fake Uber account, leads to a moment of mistaken identity, leads to a struggle in a dark street, leads to a fall, and a terrible crack, and silence. August 18, 2020, began as a normal Tuesday. Marcus Cheng drove passengers across Portland, earned money, studied programming concepts between rides, texted his wife. By 12:32 a.m. on August 19th, he was dead. Everything between those points is documented, analyzed, understood. The SD card made sure of that. But understanding doesn't resurrect. Evidence doesn't undo. The truth is complete. Marcus Cheng is still gone.